All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today, it's Solar Switch. It's this DIY solar system, and I gotta say, the story behind it really grabbed my attention.
Hmm, intriguing.
Yeah, so we've got the promotional stuff right here, and the creator, Brian, starts off by talking about this, well, terrifying experience he had, a home invasion right in the middle of a blackout.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he actually got hurt confronting the intruder.
That's awful. I can't even imagine.
I know, right? And he talks about how that whole thing, like the blackout, the vulnerability of the attack, it really just pushed him to find a way to be more self-sufficient, energy-wise, and to, well, protect his family better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When something like that happens, I mean, it makes you question everything. Like, how secure are you really? How much do you depend on things outside your control?
Exactly. And so he dives into researching solar power, right? But he hits a wall, like traditional systems.
Expensive.
Exactly. Way too expensive and complex. It just felt like they were totally out of reach for most people.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder about, well, the whole solar industry,
Mhm.
who's really benefiting from things being set up the way they are? I mean, yeah, the tech itself can be pricey, sure, but then you've got installation costs, permits, sometimes even the government seems to favor those big energy companies.
Right. Like, is it even a level playing field for someone who just wants to, like, explore some clean energy options?
That's a valid question.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets interesting. So Brian, he digs deeper and eventually comes up with this thing called Solar Switch. And let me tell you, he's calling it a total game changer.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a vertical system. He says it maximizes how much sun it gets, but in a super small space. And get this, portable, easy to maintain, and way, way cheaper than traditional setups.
Hmm. The vertical design is interesting, right? It's like flipping the script on what we usually think of with solar panels. That's a horizontal space, right?
Oh,
But this could be a great solution for people who are tight on space, especially if it really is portable, like he says.
right.
But of course, we got to look into how efficient it actually is. Like, how much power can you really get out of it compared to the traditional setups? Does it measure up?
Totally. Because smaller system could mean less power,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
But here's another big part of it, DIY. You build the whole thing yourself. Blueprints, video tutorials, he walks you through it all. And he insists, like anyone can do it, no matter how tech savvy you are.
That's a big claim. DIY can be great, so empowering, and often cheaper, of course. But when you're messing with electrical systems, things can get, well, risky if you're not careful. Clear instructions, safety precautions, that's crucial.
He does talk about safety a lot, yeah, like throughout the whole thing. Really wants to reassure people, even says it's pretty much hands-free once you get it built. It's just fascinating to me how he's trying to make this, like, solar for everyone, not just those who can afford those expensive installations.
Yeah, I see that. It's tapping into this, I don't know, a longing for self-reliance, maybe, control over your energy costs. And let's be honest, who wouldn't want to generate their own clean energy?
Right. And maybe slash that electric bill, too, right?
Exactly.
He's even got people saying they've wiped out their bills completely. Sounds almost too good to be true.
I can see why you'd be skeptical.
But he's got testimonials
Yeah.
and a money-back guarantee. I mean, that says something about how much he believes in it, right? So how do we even start unpacking all of this, figuring out if Solar Switch really lives up to all the hype?
Well, I think we got to go beyond the marketing, right? Dive into the nitty-gritty. How efficient is this vertical design? Can it actually power a whole house? How tough is it? And what about the costs, the real costs and the savings you might actually see?
Perfect. Let's do it.
So we were talking about how easy Brian makes this solar switch build sound.
Oh, yeah. Like ridiculously easy. He compares it to putting together like IKEA furniture.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, he says the instructions are super clear, step by step.
Hmm.
And then the videos, he's got those too, they walk you through every single thing.
That's smart. Some people, visuals just click for them better than words on a page, right?
Totally. It's like having him right there with you, making sure you don't mess up the wiring or something.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned the instructions and he's got the videos, but what about the actual parts? Where do you even get everything you need to build this thing?
Oh, he covers that too.
Yeah.
Says you can find pretty much everything at a regular hardware store.
Oh, that's good. Convenient.
Yeah, and he even lists out all the stuff with like estimated prices and everything. Helps with planning, right?
Absolutely. Budgeting too, which
Yeah.
is important, especially when he's making such a big deal about how much cheaper this is than those traditional systems.
Oh, yeah, he goes on and on about that. A fraction of the cost, that's his line.
Right, of course. Sounds tempting for sure. But you got to factor in everything, right? Not just the initial cost, but how much you're actually saving on those electricity bills over time. Is it really worth it in the long run?
That's true. And he talks about how with traditional solar, you often need to have them like professionally cleaned and maintained.
Yeah, can't forget about that. Adds up.
And that's what I thought was interesting. He claims Solar Switch is basically maintenance free.
Really? How's that even possible?
It's hard to say without seeing the design, up close, but he might be using materials that are like naturally resistant to dirt and stuff. Or maybe that vertical design, it just sheds dust and rain more easily.
Could be. Makes sense. Speaking of the vertical design, he talks about it being great for, well, anyone who doesn't have a ton of space.
Oh yeah, he's got all these pictures of people setting it up on balconies, rooftops, you name it.
Makes it more flexible, huh?
Yeah, and that's where the portability comes in. If it's easy to put together, take apart, and move, well, that opens up a lot of options. People who rent, people without a big yard, all that.
It's true. Imagine you move, you take your solar panels with you. That's pretty cool. But can this thing actually power a whole house, though? That's the big question.
Yeah, he does address that.
Mm.
He says it depends, how much energy you use, all that.
Mm.
He gives some estimates of how much power it can generate
Yeah.
and talks about ways to be more efficient with your energy to make the most of it.
So you're saying maybe no blasting the AC all summer long?
Probably not. But, the essentials, lights, appliances, he seems pretty confident it can handle that.
I see. And what about if your needs change? Or, you want more power down the line?
Oh, he mentions that. Says the system's scalable. You can add more panels later on if you want.
Okay, so you can start small, see how it goes.
Exactly. Grow with it as you can afford it. But then he goes even bigger, talking about how this could disrupt the whole energy grid as we know it.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about saving money on your bill.
No, it's like this whole, I don't know, energy revolution, people producing their own power, not relying on those big companies.
It's a pretty bold idea. But wouldn't that cause problems, though? I mean, if everyone starts doing their own thing, what happens to the current system?
That's a good question. He doesn't really get into the nitty-gritty of all that, the regulations, safety standards. But I think he's more focused on the idea, the potential.
Yeah, the vision. It is exciting to think about people being more self-sufficient, relying less on fossil fuels. But we got to be realistic too, right? There are a lot of moving parts to this whole energy thing.
For sure. And speaking of realistic, what about the environment? He talks about Solar Switch being this green solution. But what about all the stuff that goes into making solar panels, then getting rid of them when they're old? Isn't there a downside there?
There always is, right? With
Yeah.
anything. Manufacturing takes energy, resources, and yeah, disposing of those panels responsibly, that's important. But overall, compared to burning fossil fuels, solar's still a much cleaner option.
So lots to consider here. The tech stuff, the impact on the world, everything. But let's get back to the people actually using this. What's it really like living with Solar Switch day in and day out?
That's what we need to know. Does it live up to the hype? Does it really give you that feeling of control Brian keeps talking about?
Right. And he's got all those testimonials, people raving about it.
Yeah.
Got to dig into those and see what they're really saying. All right, so we've looked at the tech behind Solar Switch, the potential impact, all that. But really, it comes down to the people using it, right? What's their experience?
That's the bottom line, right? Does it actually deliver? That feeling of, I don't know, empowerment, self-sufficiency that Brian talks about?
Exactly. And he's got all these testimonial people saying how much they love it, talking about how it's changed their whole view of energy. Like, they're more aware of how much they use, feeling more in control, and some are seeing those big savings he talks about.
It's interesting how it goes beyond the practical stuff, right, to the, I guess, the psychological. Feeling prepared if the power goes out, knowing you've got a backup, that's got to be a huge relief.
Especially these days, right? With all the crazy weather, the grid being shaky sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like peace of mind, insurance against all that. But let's get back to those cost savings for a second. He throws out this number, like 68% off your electric bill. Is that even realistic?
I mean, it could be, but it's not a guarantee, right? It depends. Where you live, how much energy you use, how big your system is, even your utility company's policies.
Right, so many variables.
He does say that, though. Encourages people to do their homework, figure out their own potential savings, be realistic about it.
That's good, at least. He's not overselling it, making promises he can't keep. He even suggests, starting small. Maybe just powering a few appliances at first, then expanding later.
That's a smart approach.
Yeah.
Especially for DIY, right? Learn as you go, grow as you need to. And that feeling of, building something yourself, accomplishing something, I think that appeals to people too. It's not just buying a product, it's more than that.
It's like taking control, right?
Yeah.
Your energy, your future. And that brings us back to that bigger picture, this idea that DIY solar switch, could it really change the whole energy system?
It's a big question, lots of challenges, obviously. If everyone starts generating their own power, how do you integrate that into the existing grid? Regulations, safety, making sure everyone benefits. It's complicated.
Could also exciting, right? To think about what's possible, people working together, creating a more sustainable future. And Solar Switch seems like it's offering a way for anyone to be a part of that.
Yeah, it's a compelling story. Brian's passion, his drive to make this accessible, that's what really stands out.
Agreed. It's more than just a product, it's a vision, inviting people to join him, become more self-reliant. And that's a powerful message.
It is. So for anyone listening who's, intrigued, wants to learn more, see if Solar Switch might be right for them, there's a link in the episode description. All the details are there, the blueprints, the videos, even that money-back guarantee he talks about. Definitely worth a look.
Absolutely. And even if this specific system isn't for you, hopefully this deep dive got you thinking, maybe spark some of that DIY spirit. Thanks for joining us.